Good afternoon, and welcome to today's T&D World webinar titled Your Mileage May Vary, Undergrounding Distribution Lines, sponsored by Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative and Burns & McDonnell. I'm Nikki Chandler, Executive Editor of T&D World with Endeavor Business Media. To begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if you have any technical difficulties during the session, please submit to the questions window and our technical experts will help you out. We do recommend disabling any pop-up blocking software or extensions in your browser, as these can cause issues with the webinar player. Additionally, we welcome your questions during the event today, and we will answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that will follow the main presentation. But please feel free to send in your questions at any time. To do so, simply type your questions into the question window on the side of your screen and hit the submit button. Also, please be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the T&D World website within the next 24 hours. You will be notified by email when that archive is available. Now, I would like to welcome Mike Beeler, the National Spokesperson for the Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative, who will introduce us to today's panel. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks a lot, Nikki. It's a pleasure to be here today. Welcome, everybody. I want to tell you a little bit about the Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative, PDI Squared, as we like to call it. PDI Squared is a group of contractors and consultants like Burns & McDonnell, and vendors of equipment and cable manufacturers that advocate for an evaluation of the cost of overhead versus underground over the total life of the asset. So we want planners and engineers to have the resources to be able to evaluate the cost of overhead versus underground over the life of the asset. Today, we're going to talk about undergrounding distribution lines in particular, and I love this title, Your Mileage May Vary. There are many big utilities across the country right now that are engaged in multi-billion-dollar initiatives, and that's not everybody, but there's some big ones that are doing multi-billion-dollar initiatives to underground a lot of their system, and their mileage may vary. And today, Burns & McDonnell is going to tell us about some of their experience. We have Adam Rayfield with us and Madhu Bhargava with us, and they're going to explain some of the interesting things that they're learning as they get out and engage on undergrounding with their clients. So, Madhu, I'm going to give you a quick opportunity just to say hello before we turn it over to both of you, you and Adam, just to say hello on behalf of Burns & McDonnell. Madhu?
Hey, Mike. Thanks so much. It's so good to be here. I can also continue to, introduce myself if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Madhu Bhargava. I'm currently a department manager within the distribution group at Burns McDonnell, and I've been here almost 6 years now. Overall, across my 11 years of experience in the transmission and distribution space, I've worked on distribution design and planning projects, both overhead and underground for various utilities. I've been an owner's engineer and led owner's engineering teams. I've worked on project planning and project development, and I currently help lead strategic initiatives and support the program management organization on a large grid investment program. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Likewise, Madhu. I think one of the interesting parts of your background is that you have both overhead and underground transmission and distribution experience. I think a lot of engineers in our industry today realize that it's advantageous to have both of those to be able to build T&D assets, whether we go overhead or underground. Adam Rayfield, go ahead and say hello to the audience and give a quick introduction as well, if you would, please.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. And thanks, Nikki and T&D World for inviting us to speak today. My name is Adam Rayfield. I'm the business line manager for underground and submarine cables group here at Burns & McDonnell. I've got over 18 years experience in the power industry. Here at Burns & Mac, our support to utility clients with undergrounding their distribution systems has run the gamut from standard engineering only support all the way to EPC solutions, and as well as even overall project management and program management. Just very honored to be able to present today.
Well, we're glad to have you, Adam, and we might ask a question or two about submarine. That's a very intriguing thing. I know Burns & Mac's doing a lot of offshore wind and has submarine cables, so not the topic of today, but certainly one of interest, and it's fun to be able to work for a big firm that can do all of that. So we're going to go on to the next slide. I think I told you briefly what the Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative does. And so this next slide will jump right in with Adam and Madhu to talk about how your mileage may vary. So Adam, Madhu, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yes, our agenda today is packed with insights to guide your undergrounding of projects to be successful. But for those of you that are down the road in your undergrounding program, this might be mostly approaches and strategies that you're currently implementing. But if you're about to start your adventure of strategic undergrounding at an early stage, or maybe considering pivoting, we certainly hope this discussion is beneficial. But before we get started, as Burns & McDonnell is an EPC-driven company, I'd be remiss not to start our discussion with a quick safety moment. Given what we've seen across the country with major weather events in the past few weeks, including Hurricane Idalia making landfall today, I wanted to address some vital points where you encounter down power lines. So first and foremost, just stay away. Down power lines are extremely dangerous. Always assume they're live. Call for help if you see a down line, both emergency services and your local utility. Obviously, keep your distance. Electricity can travel through the ground, so avoid touching anything nearby. Warn others to stay away as well until you've been given the all clear by trained professionals. And lastly, stay in your vehicle if a power line comes in contact with it. Should you need to evacuate the vehicle, certainly exit without touching the vehicle and the ground at the same time. Okay, so with that, we'll start with understanding the drivers behind choosing your solution. And let's see, just make sure we're on the right slide here. Choosing your solution and how that will shape your strategy to achieve your specific goals. Then we're going to discuss planning for success. So proper planning sets the stage for a well-prepared approach, including how to prioritize the projects you have selected, establishing guidance to engineer and construct those projects, the extreme importance of community outreach, and what ancillary impacts are created beyond the intended infrastructure replacement. All of that results in how efficiency and quality is driven by a well-executed supply chain strategy as well. And then next, we'll navigate variables with risk-informed implementation. So this includes identifying challenges and mitigating them during execution to ensure a smooth journey and a future-forward grid solution. And then we'll kind of recap with some final thoughts and key takeaways from today's webinar.
Adam, that looks like a great agenda. I just got a comment on the irony of your safety moment, though, too, in talking about overhead when your topic today is underground. I think that's an irony that most probably didn't miss. So very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. And we appreciate that safety culture at Burns & McDonnell, to be sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Every day is focused on safety for us. All right, so continuing on, talking about achieving our goals. I want to make sure we're on the right slide here. Okay, so achieving your goals. So first step at any large project or program is to understand the problems you're trying to solve and the drivers that dictate, when and how much undergrounding your distribution system addresses those problems. So, some key factors that play a significant role in shaping the decision to go underground, they are going to include, just like I mentioned during the safety moment, weather events, right? Undergrounding reduces weather-related outage caused by storms, high winds, falling debris, enhances grid resiliency, ensures consistent power supply, right? But the type of weather events and associated outages are important. Do you have severe ice or snowstorms on a regular basis that impact, your entire overhead line? Or is it mostly just, tree-driven outages during high wind events where you can kind of focus on veg management? Truly understanding the cause of those outages can inform how much undergrounding is needed to significantly improve resiliency without simply undergrounding everything, of course. O&M cost reduction. So, while installation costs are higher, the long-term benefits to reduce maintenance and repair expenses make undergrounding, attractive for a lot of utilities. I think that's certainly a benefit we're all seeing. Think about those hard-to-access areas where veg management costs are significantly high relative to the number of customers affected. And perhaps the solution is not the large scale, but maybe attacking those small, low-density customer laterals, but they're in inaccessible locations where they have a significant impact on O&M dollars. Topography, of course, areas with challenging terrain, hilly landscapes, rocky surfaces, you may find underground more practical in certain circumstances where it minimizes construction difficulties. Customer density, again, undergrounding can be beneficial in a densely populated area just as much as those kind of rural lateral areas. It ensures uninterrupted power for a large customer base and maintaining essential services. Public safety, undergrounding eliminates the risk of overhead lines coming into contact with people or objects, even mitigating potential wildfires. We've seen that in California and other places as well. Just enhancing public safety and reducing hazards. Aesthetics, visual impact of overhead lines can be mitigated by undergrounding. That's an obvious benefit, right? Improving the appearance of the neighborhoods and landscapes around us. Perhaps having alliance with a given community determines your strategy and schedule to move things along with far less resistance, right? So thinking about how you want to interact and be a partner with the communities that you're serving. That kind of really leads into customer experience. So consistent power supply enhances that customer satisfaction, leading to a positive overall customer experience. And we all know those affected by power outages will make it widely known through social media or the news, and for good reason, right? Undergrounding has proven to enhance reliability when implemented correctly.
Yeah, and I was going to say
Yeah, go ahead, but
sorry, Mike. Yeah. So the customer experience portion or the justification, it's not new, right? For the past few years now, there's been a shift in the culture and priorities as far as how the interaction between a utility and a customer progresses. And to me, investing in the customer experience is up there as a potential justification for what could potentially drive us to pick undergrounding as a solution or to defer undergrounding, depending on the situation, and especially to foster the give and take that's undoubtedly going to be part of the grid of the future. Mike?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Madhu, and that is exactly what some of these big utilities are already finding out, that these projects are more than just engineering and construction. They are customer experience, customer engagement, and to your point, Madhu, it turns out to be a pretty positive thing when you come into somebody's community and you're adding all of the aforementioned topics. You're adding resiliency to the system, you're adding aesthetics to the system, you're working with them very directly with your public relations people, and it becomes a very good opportunity for a utility to engage in a positive manner with the public, doing something that actually benefits the public right there in their own neighborhood. Many times when they're undergrounding laterals, for example, and service connections to homes and such. So great point, Madhu, and appreciate you making that.
Yep. All right. So we went through a list of potential drivers for your project or portfolio or program. Investing time in deciding your North Star or compass is a big step to be able to not just predict what you and other stakeholders want and need the outcome to be. It also gives you insight into how you would course correct as your large project or program progresses. An undergrounding project could be, anywhere from a few months to a year or two. And you want this to be the North Star needs to be an achievable set of goals, given the constraints of time and prudence. The next big chunk of investment in time, effort, and energy is the upfront planning. Based on our experience being involved in, different stages of the project cycle, doing different roles too, Adam and I wanted to put together a list of critical items that anybody who is part of a project needs to have thought through that will hopefully not let you lose sight of what you're trying to resolve or achieve. The overarching strategy for each item is best decided or at a minimum discussed extensively at this stage, at the planning stage, But I could imagine several of those morphing into different beasts, right, at different stages of the life cycle of a project or program. And Adam will go through some examples.
Thanks, Badoo. So yeah, the first one really is work prioritization. So this one is key, right? If we're going to start off, this is a crucial step in the undergrounding process. So consider, factors that make informed decisions. Right off the bat, one of the big challenges that I know many face is the regional versus feeder performance driven, right? So decide whether to prioritize entire regions or specific feeders based on performance metrics like outage frequency and duration. There's pros and cons to each. An example would be focusing on a given region to attain economies of scale on permitting or crew locality and material laydown. However, this may result in a worse performing circuit in another region waiting years before they're addressed. So that's one of the ones that really, as a utility client, you want to understand how you want to impact your system and therefore provide the benefit to your customers while also balancing costs on that front.
Well, I like your emphasis on planning. I'll just comment here real quick, Adam. I like your emphasis on planning because imagine if you're Pacific Gas and Electric and you are building you're rebuilding your company from the underground up, as they like to say, and they've come out and made a commitment. The CEO has made a commitment to Wall Street that we're going to underground 10% of our system, which is a huge amount of their T&D system, and they're going to underground 10% of their system. Well, the question is, what 10% is going to be undergrounded? So your points here about planning and planning for success and figuring out what feeders and what lines and what laterals need to be undergrounded have got big impact on the customers. And of course, you've got to go to your regulator as well and get regulatory approval for the whole package. So great emphasis, Burns and Mac, on planning and the necessity for planning ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And that even goes on to schedule and kind of realizing those benefits too, right? So when we talk about, the portfolio mix here on that next item, that's trying to focus on residential or commercial and size of the projects, but really balancing the portfolio mix ensures a comprehensive approach where you can see early wins. Imagine starting your program with like 5 20-mile projects. You might be 2 to 3 years out before any of those projects are fully livened, right? So your customers, the commission that you mentioned, they likely don't want to wait that long to see fruits of your labor. So not only are you trying to figure out where you want to do the work, but you want to stagger that work such that you see benefits along the way.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's always good to know when your portfolio is expected to produce results and why you're expecting it with that timeline. This is not just to judge the success of your portfolio and for continual improvement, but, thinking of, I shudder to think what would happen if you did not set expectations up in the beginning with all stakeholders. And that's not just all the folks that you communicate with laterally, but everyone that you communicate towards the top who are not really involved in your program or large project, but are expecting results as soon as possible. It always helps to set expectations up to, or have the levers to pull to pivot and act like you just casually went with the flow.
And sometimes, Madhu, if you're new to doing a major undergrounding program, setting those expectations for senior leadership of the company, who likewise will set them with the regulators, it's a little challenging to do. So, I think in the case of the company that you're working with, for example, they've got some utilities around them that are doing some good things, some best practices, some lessons learned, but likewise, you at Burns & McDonnell can provide some of that as well because you work for so many different utilities. You've seen so many different game plans and you know what some reasonable expectations are. Do you agree with that, Madhu? And you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So I think more importantly, in addition to just the knowledge and the context behind what solution's good, I think it's also good to learn from the mistakes of others too, from the perspective of, hey, this is a solution that looks amazing on paper. not really in real life, because this is going to be a nightmare for coordination. Just in that regard, I think, and also helping to benchmark different processes and the efficacy of them, I think just being in my position has been very useful.
Agreed. Bringing that experience to your clients is great value.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So continuing on, these other items, most of them are straightforward, but again, these are things you want to consider. Again, we talk about looking at safety and SAIDI, but some of this also has to play into the role of critical infrastructure, right? So prioritize areas such as hospitals, emergency services, data centers to ensure continuous operations during outages. So being aware of what critical customers you have on your system as well is important. Natural disaster vulnerability, certainly identifying regions prone to natural disasters and undergrounding lines to enhance the resiliency and minimize recovery time is certainly key. Economic impacts. This is one that, yes, it may not have a direct bottom line for the utility itself, but consider the economic centers and business districts where outages have significant financial implications, making undergrounding, a very strategic choice. I've seen many utilities do that kind of research and realize the impact that even a 24-hour outage in a certain area might have would be significant, in the billions sometimes, in terms of financial impacts. Overall benefits to the system, evaluate how undergrounding aligns with the broader grid improvement goals, enhancing your system reliability and performance. So this is, as we talked about in the beginning, Mike, this is not just the only solution going on at the time for the grid. There's going to be distribution automation. There's going to be other hardening advancements that are going on as well to holistically improve the system. So as we discuss work prioritization, just remember that a well-balanced approach considers both immediate needs and long-term benefits.
As you're transitioning to the next slide, Adam and Madhu, I'll just remind the audience that feel free to submit your questions. We're about halfway through right now, so if you've got questions for Adam and Madhu, feel free to submit them, and we will get to them here in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, let us know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help answer them, especially on this topic, which I have, near and dear and stay awake at night experience in. As part of the, I helped set up a program and also was part of the owner's engineering team and was involved in all aspects of engineering and project development, right? So one thing that we really found was, I know that typically utilities have standards or a set of guidance documents that they follow. But if you're thinking of having a large program or large project that is trying to achieve a specific goal and you have that compass, an easy way to lose the plot on achievability is if you've not thought through pain points that are going to come get you when it's time to execute. A huge part of having designs not be automated, right, is the value proposition of engineering judgment. I could tell you as a planner to install underground cable through a mountain because I looked at a printout of an aerial map of the area. I know I'm setting myself up to be laughed at, and that's not typical planning practice, right, these days, but it could happen. But imagine I was that dumb. Well, technically, you could probably put that underground in if you spent enough money. But does that make sense? No. Am I going to hold a design engineer partly to blame because they had blinders on? Maybe. Should I have established guardrails that allowed the use of engineering judgment, but in a responsible manner? Yes. Setting up engineering and construction guidance that aligns with program goals, but also sets constraints or boundaries around execution is key. This is basically dumbing down the overall strategic goals, not to make it dumber, but to make it more transparent with your execution team on when to raise the red flag so they can approach execution with a similar mindset as you, who is looking at it at the 10,000 foot level. And then buy-in across stakeholders. This is similar to alignment with the program goals. Think through who all your stakeholders are, not just the ones that are going to help take your project, your program, your vision to the end zone, but also the ones that are going to validate your project, your program, your vision after you've demobilized and moved on to the next shiny thing. I always hear this, you need to get construction input on your designs. And I absolutely agree with that. But if you know, as part of your program, that you're going to revamp the system, something that maintenance crews or troublemen deal with all day, every day, have the courtesy to get their opinion on the overall strategy. Get into the details if you have to. A good example is providing concessions on operating clearances for underground switchgear, right? Or if a customer wants landscaping around equipment for it to be out of sight. Someone who just constructs, especially when the bush or the landscaping is not around, may not have the same perspective and pain points as someone who troubleshoots or maintains. Just something to think about. And then streamline communication and execution. So this is true for all projects, regardless of size and domain. But on a critical project or large program or any permutation or combination of those, it's very beneficial to set up roles and responsibilities, not just to get things done faster and better, but also to hold the right person accountable. And forget a blue sky day. Gaps become most apparent sometimes with a single bad event, like an outage a minute-long outage at a key customer location, or someone didn't tamp down the grass properly on the sidewalk next to the mayor's house. I know that's specific, but it could happen on your son's birthday, My best advice is to not focus on preventing such things from happening, but to be prepared for that to happen. And like I said, prepared for that to happen on your kid's birthday, anniversary, you name it. If you've got a date that you remember, be prepared.
Okay, I like this slide, Madhu, and I acknowledge that you do need to be prepared for these events that impact system reliability. Right now down in Florida, there's a big hurricane coming through the panhandle of Florida and going up into the Carolinas, and people are scrambling all over the southeast to prepare for that. So reliability, resiliency, safety, these things are fundamental in the industry. I'm glad that when you said that engineers and planners need to go talk to the people that are actually going to construct it, I like that. But I think more and more these days, I think we need to talk to the men and women that are going to operate and maintain these systems for the life of the asset. I know some utilities now are getting their operations people in and bringing them in to talk to the engineers. Okay, you're going to design me something, but I'm going to have to live with the asset for the next 40 or 50 years, and this is how I'm going to operate it and maintain it. So great point. I'm glad, Madhu, that you and others at Burns & Mac are thinking about that, and that is the bigger picture. You say see the bigger picture? That is the bigger picture, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I know you don't see troublemen on a daily basis, you're probably, I've heard of people just being annoyed because they don't turn in their trouble tickets with comprehensive information. But if you had to see what they deal with, if you do a ride along, you kind of understand. They have a goal, and their North Star is just to get customers back live. So, yeah, and also, when looking at the bigger picture, I feel like it's a little hard it's easy to say, but harder to do if you don't have the right context. So I'm going to cop out and provide like a specific scenario. We're all well aware of the hard time we're having getting transformers, and we all seem to have different ways of dealing with it. There was a period of time in between 2021 and 2022 when the resin that's used in the manufacture of high-density polyethylene pipe was in short supply. So, of course, conduit was in short supply. If you were the decision maker and your engineering and construction guidance said, install conduit everywhere, potentially install spare conduit, you need to be able to pivot and decide what your with the knowledge or having the context of your North Star, you need to be able to decide if you want to pursue alternate material, if you want to live without it, if you want to pick a more intelligent option that I come up with, but an option that's right for you and the program. And it's, let's say, I imagine this audience to be not just decision makers, right? Also like a project engineer. So if you are the project engineer, like I may be on a project or a program, the way you would see the bigger picture is by not being conservative like we typically are, and review the project design and provide recommendations to the decision maker to consider. So we all have roles that we play and value that we can add. This is one where this is a good just guidance to have in mind of, let's see the bigger picture, ask to see the bigger picture, try to understand what's driving the overall program or large project or big undergrounding project, et cetera.
Thanks, Madhu. So I'll stress on that one as well. That's an area where certainly in my history, I've seen clients that maybe got into it a little too quickly and didn't get the right buy-ins from everybody, and that's usually where you see it about a year or two down the road, where all of a sudden some of those decisions you made early on are now proving false or challenging to continue forward with. So you have to pivot. So certainly that big picture, it's a great point. Another item, though, community outreach. This one, to me, is just absolutely paramount for success of undergrounding projects. I can't stress that enough, really. There's some suggestions on how to foster understanding and support here. So, I'll start with just starting early. Begin outreach at the planning phase. Engage those stakeholders and address concerns before, those misconceptions take root. You don't want to get into a town hall setting where everyone's angry with you proceeding forward and kind of tearing up their backyards or their streets without them really understanding the benefit that they're going to see. So to that end, over communicate, right? Keep the community informed at every step. Use whatever channels are available to you: social media, town halls, as I mentioned, newsletters. Just ensure no one's left in the dark. Last thing you want is boots on the ground, going through customers' backyards without any knowledge of why. And not only is that going to create tension between you and the customers, but it's likely going to create undue safety risks for the team in the field, to be honest. Leveraging new and old technology. This one, utilizing digital tools and traditional methods for communication. We certainly think of social media platforms, the town halls, as I mentioned. Maybe it's your website that you have, but it can be old school as well. It can be door hangers, postcards. I've seen, even for more challenging, we've done this in the past too, where we've actually done like VR headsets for customers that can see a transformer. What is this giant green box on my lawn, and what's it going to look like? These are sometimes solutions that really gain their trust and understanding if they just need a visual aid to kind of help them process what we're really trying to achieve here and ask of them. So lastly, but what's in it for them, right? That has to be the mindset when you're engaging your community. You want to communicate those benefits: reliable power, improved safety, enhanced aesthetics, as we've mentioned already. I think there's even numerous studies out there that even point to an increase in property value for homes, underground services versus overhead. So that's key. I know I certainly want my property value to go up. So if that's something that I'm aware of as a kind of result of that, I would be much more interested to buy off on going down that path with my utility. So just remembering community support is the foundation of successful undergrounding. Engage, inform, listen, and create a shared vision with that community that you're serving.
All right. So we chatted about this a little earlier, but I cannot stress this enough. think of a project beyond the as-built. What are we leaving behind? And, while that's philosophically relevant by itself, it's also very importantly relevant to schedule and cost. And thinking through this is also important to outreach and stakeholder engagement. We came up with a few examples that are, slam dunk things to think about when putting existing overhead facilities underground. But obviously, this is not meant to be comprehensive. This is more of us attempting to inspire discussion. So, refeeding existing services. So you've decided to underground the primary line in front of very expensive houses. Part of your pitch to them at town halls and door hangers and everything is that, hey, we're going underground. Except some of them have overhead services. There's coax cable on the poles. And when you left the area after you hassled them for an entire year as you bored cable, and worse, you also got a piece of their front yard for green boxes of various sizes. It turns out that you did not go underground. You did, but you didn't. So think through these situations of what are they going to see after your project? You had several options in this case, both upfront and after the fact, to do nothing, to change overhead services to underground at program cost, to upgrade those services for a nominal fee to underground, or to be very clear and temper expectations. And this is also, this kind of also goes back to getting that stakeholder buy-in that we're doing this for a specific reason. No, we won't be able to do these other things. Yes, it would be nice to have those other things, but we're going to stop at some point.
Madhu, that's a great point. I'm gonna give you a question here from the audience, from a utility in the audience that is right along the lines of what you're talking about right now. And the question is, how many people in the community need to buy into underground for a neighborhood, and how were the more skeptical customers convinced? So to your point, you're not gonna do everything for everybody. So how many people in a neighborhood have to buy in, and how do you convince the ones that are a little bit more skeptical?
That's a tough one to answer definitively. But I would say
Agreed.
This is where communicating early and understanding if it's, so think about it in terms of the risk. Can I convince 10% of the community when 90% of the community has bought into underground? Yeah, it's not a big deal. Maybe we don't even need to convince them, but because we know it's for their good. But if 60% of the community is vehemently against undergrounding, well, you probably want to think through the driver at that point. Do you actually need this underground to explain? And you think that project is not feasible? Well, I think an exception discussion that you need to have and talk through, is this going to be part of an achievable goal, or is it a long-term strategy because this project is absolutely essential for the betterment of the overall grid? I hope that helped.
That's good. Go ahead.
So I think the answer depends. Hopefully you have a majority of the community have not have issues where they may greatly impact the entire project. That's the project by the items in discussion. So, and then shared use facilities and streetlights, right? This is a simple or similar one to think through. Is there an opportunity to share costs with someone else and net other benefits in the process? Maybe this is a credit to your program costs, and you could also win over the 40% of the people that are mad that they're still going to have holes in their front yards. And then also, this is a hard one to visualize, but think about the potential limitations that you're leaving behind as well, as a result of your project. I say this because, at least, let me go through a specific example. Let's say you went underground, but you as a utility or your client as a utility has an overarching strategy and goal to install distribution automation on all their feeders by a certain date, 2030, let's say. Well, is undergrounding all the primary going to fit into their distribution automation scheme? Or do you need to prompt a discussion right away with all the relevant stakeholders? And trust me, there are going to be several of those where you need to talk through improving integration, or maybe install a dedicated network for coordination. So these are all things that I would say are things that you need to think about as far as leaving behind after your project. Okay, we can quickly do the supply chain strategy because we've through that from several different perspectives already. But material procurement and strategy hand, as I know, and it's the best seller project ever. Thinking the strategy based on how your project is, how much time and money you have, leverage you have within your existing organization to corral resources or potentially budget for things to provide. Those are all important discussions to have up front. And then standardization versus flexibility. We've chatted about this as well. How much room do you have to pivot? Is standardization more important to you than flexibility? Maybe. It's just something you need to have an upfront discussion about with the right stakeholders. So when project execution model.
Madhu, you're kind of breaking up on us a little bit. Let's shift to Adam here and see if you can fix your audio a little bit. Adam, can you transition onto the next slide?
Yeah, I can even continue. I know she was touching on project execution model. So it's just important at the lower level for a project engineer to make sure that a project performs successfully. But it's also extremely important when setting up a program or a large project to have a safe space discussion. Key performance indicators across all stages. So this one strikes home to me as well, because what I've seen quite a bit has been, hey, we're progressing towards this massive, as you mentioned, like $1 billion program, and yet we don't really have good KPIs to figure out, are we on the right track? Maybe we're $1 billion in, and we're realizing, for the remainder of the project, we don't have nearly as much, money left to do what we want to do than we thought, and how did we get here, right? So figuring out what those KPIs are that you really want to ensure that you're progressing in a cost-effective manner, in a manner that's actually achieving results as you go, right? You don't want to have to wait 10 years to see the results. You want to see them year over year. Certainly that's going to make it easier when you go for rate cases to show, the prudency that you've done, year to date or cycle to date for the previous portion of that program, to continue to provide that benefit to the customers, right? So thinking through those KPIs is really a key aspect that I think most don't really put enough thought into up front. And it's one that certainly you can add as you go, right? As you start to realize what's important. Maybe you didn't think about it initially, but it might be one that you really want to address as you move forward. So I will move to the next slide. I'll just check Madhu. I don't know, are you back with us, or?
I think I'm back.
Okay.
Looks like I'm back.
Good. Well, let's go ahead. We have about 20 or 25 questions here from the audience, so we'll wrap up these slides and we'll get to the questions.
Sounds great.
All right.
Yeah. So I think, like I said, if I imagine the audience, right, of this webinar, I imagine a mix of decision makers and also individual contributors. And when I say decision makers, I don't mean just on large programs, but maybe you make decisions on bidding turnkey projects, for example. So in this section, you'll find a mix of items that are specific to some roles and items that span across roles and responsibilities. So this is us. So now you've figured out the planning and you're getting to the point where you're understanding execution and estimating jobs. And this is where you put together how information or guidance or the pillars to implement the project that is informed by risk. A very obvious risk is field conditions. You could have existing utility conflicts. You could account for those in various ways, but you could still have unmarked utilities. You could have highway and waterway crossings or railroad crossings that affect schedule and budget. You could go through various solutions to figure out the soil profile of where you're installing facilities. And then this is this is one of my biggest lessons learned. You think about hidden factors. Hidden factors like, think about, okay, you've done your field, you've done your field visit, you've figured out, you have a topographical survey, but your estimate doesn't think about the amount of traffic control needed because maybe the contractor or construction contractor you're going to use does not do any live work, and it's going to take double the amount of time. Maybe you need to hydrovac all pole locations. Maybe you need a security, a person to support you or protect you, or the crew, like a police escort that costs $200,000 a month. Those are all things that are hidden factors that when you're upfront trying to estimate a project could make or break a project.
Thanks, Madhu. And another aspect that's risk-informed implementation, land use strategy. This one is definitely another crucial piece to undergrounding success. So easement declinations, they're inevitable. You're going to have it. We talked about this already. There's going to be folks out there that just aren't on board, or they just don't want, they want the benefits, but they don't want to have to give up an easement to do it. So that's understandable, and it's something that engineering and the team should be prepared for. So, easement flexibility. This is one where designing systems that allow flexibility within easement constraints is going to be key. So this is not only just looking at adjacent lots, maybe when you're looking for a place to locate a transformer or a switchgear, but also within those lots, right? You want to give the land agent options when they talk to the customer to allow the customer to have a say as far as where some of this equipment is located on their property. You'll see much higher buy-in from that property owner if they could say, my garden's in that back corner. I really don't want it to be there. If we can put it over here in the middle, I'll be much happier, and I'll sign today. If the engineering and land agents are coordinated together, you're going to be able to do that in a much more streamlined fashion. I know, synergy on that is key. We've seen at Burns McDonnell, we've implemented GIS platform software that really allows engineering and land agents to kind of have a single source of truth for the design locations, both the preferred and recommended locations, but also kind of an allotment of where that equipment can go to ensure that we can proceed and get those easements in a timely fashion. Because I've seen a lot of designs look great on paper, but then again, easements hold it up or bring it back to the drawing board to correct. Last one would be like long lead time easements. Think, there's going to be some easements that require long lead due to complexities. Initiate these discussions early. These ones you're going to know about, you want to prioritize in your approach there. this is definitely one that I've seen also slow up larger projects. There's a gas line that you're crossing, a transmission gas. These are things that you want to make sure you understand what their requirements are. You're interfacing with them and getting ahead of that. All right, and last we'll talk about future state considerations. Madhu?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly run through this in the interest of time. But, obviously there's growing energy demand. You kind of need to think through if your program is going to account for that or not. And both of those are fair answers. Contingent projects, this one is a good one to account for, especially ones that are transmission projects or DOT or road widening or, planning projects. Facility maintenance, we've chatted through this. Understanding and keeping in mind maintenance and operations is very important and helps us, leave a better product behind. Environmental impact, obviously, this could make or break a project and could result in a bunch of fines that you did not account for. And then DER integration, obviously, we know the makeup of the load is changing, and there's going to be give and take. And you want to think through if you're going to be in an area that is incentivized to add more of these sources to the grid, and how you'll account for that, or if you need to account for that, or if everyone's aware that you will not be accounting for it if you're undergrounding a system.
That's a great point on that DER integration, Madhu, and that was one of the questions from the audience is how do you account for distributed energy resources like rooftop solar and fuel cells and storage and electric vehicle charging stations. So very important that we put in a 21st century grid to accommodate some of these things, especially with the advent of FERC Order 2222. So Adam, bring us home here on the final slide and we'll get to some questions real quick.
Sounds great, Mike. All right, so final thoughts. Just don't be afraid to underground lines. Embrace the benefits of undergrounding, but remember that careful planning and risk awareness are going to be vital for your success. Cost effectiveness, undergrounding can be not only the right solution, but also a cost-effective one when you consider the long-term benefits and reduce maintenance costs. And then, we've kind of talked about it a little bit throughout, but just adaptive strategy. Your strategy should evolve based on your experience over time. So lessons learned, observe trends, drive continuous improvement. And just remember, undergrounding represents a journey toward resiliency and reliability. And I think this is one that definitely has to be part of the solution. Does not need to be the end-all, be-all solution for any issues, but it is definitely a makeup that I think every utility needs to consider as part of their grid moving forward.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing that more and more in the industry as well. So here's some real quick questions. Talk to me about cost in general. So this came from a telecom utility. What are the resources for the cost of underground? Do you got anything? I know PDI Squared is working on that right now, trying to get improve the ability to have resources available for people. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say cost is one of those that is very hyper-specific to the location, to the makeup of the demographics of the area, the terrain, even the labor costs. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. It is very difficult to say, undergrounding should cost X dollars per foot. It's not a universal assessment, unfortunately. So, taking
and likewise,
in all
that's true for overhead as well. Another quick topic: underground subsurface utility conflicts. What happens if the public records aren't accurate enough, and you just really don't know where the other underground conflicts are?
So that's a good question, and it happens all the time. Happens more in some areas than not. You'd be lucky to be in Minnesota that is trying to get all their utilities into like a GIS system that's available for all, right? But it happens all the time, and I think the biggest thing to do, the easiest thing to do there would be to contractually specify some checks and balances like potholing. But it is an evil, and it's impossible to completely eliminate that risk.
Right. Here's another question about, this question comes from a municipal utility saying, are you seeing municipal utilities with large overhead to underground conversion programs, and what are their drivers? I will tell you just off the top, I know that Fort Collins and Beaches Energy and Colorado Springs Utilities and Anaheim Public Utilities, they have a lot of underground right now. Are you seeing, Madhu and Adam, are you seeing any more municipal utilities in particular?
I've seen quite a bit across the country, Mike. And again, a lot of those factors that we talked about at the beginning, they're pulling from a lot of those. Some of these communities are very much interested in improving the aesthetics to kind of improve, to entice more to move to that community, or certainly stay and grow in that community. Maybe it's enticing commercial or industrial type customers to come to their location, so they're trying to improve the reliability to enhance that for them. And to your point, some of those areas you mentioned, they're going to be prone to those weather events that we talked about. So that is a key aspect. They want to ensure their community is resilient and reliable for those events.
Okay, so here's the last question from the audience, and this came from a number of people, so I'll just paraphrase this. If you're putting power underground, why wouldn't you tie this project with fiber or coaxial to save the community grief? In other words, why wouldn't you underground everything that's on that wood pole? You guys made reference to this, but Madhu, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think a big part is cost and coordination. I'm sure there are folks here in the audience who have tried to coordinate with, two large organizations to accomplish a series of small incremental things. It is very hard to do on time and on budget, in my opinion.
Yeah, and adding on to that, Madhu, I mean, I would also argue, I mean, they're a business, right? So there's going to be cases where, hey, they just installed, 10 miles of overhead fiber along this pole line, and 2 years later, the utility wants to underground. Well, that's, the cost they just invested to put that overhead fiber in already, they're not going to realize, the cost benefit there if they go underground. So there's timing of things, there's coordination at a mass scale that would need to happen. I know a lot of communities are interested to make that possible, and some are trying to find ways to set up portals to see what products are there in advance that coordinate, but that's definitely one that is a tough one to crack. Everyone's trying.
Yeah, some of that stuff too, Adam. Some of that's new fiber, some of that's very old, antiquated telecom that's a stranded asset that has been fully depreciated, and there's not going to make any further investment in doing anything on that until it falls down. Thank you, audience, for the questions. You sent in a lot of questions. I think we got to a few of them. Great topic today from Burns McDonnell. Manu Bhargava, I'll give you a minute to wrap up and say thank you, and then Adam Rayfield the same. So, Madhu, have you got any concluding comments?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for letting me be part of the discussion, and there's always a right solution to everything, and sometimes it includes undergrounding, and sometimes you can do it in a cost-effective manner. It's just a matter of planning it properly and being aware of the risk. I'm happy to help you with that.
And your email address is on the slide along with Adam Rayfield. Rayfield, any concluding comments for us, Adam?
Yeah, sure, Mike. A shameless plug. Certainly, as Burns McDonnell is kind of a leader in the nation on T&D, we'd love to support anyone that's looking into this as a solution for them, or just wants help, right? Maybe they're already well into it and seeing some struggles and wants to see, let's utilize the knowledge that we've gained supporting multiple clients across the country and even throughout the world, supporting this type of work, and bring that general knowledge to you as well to help you along your way.
Yeah, you guys have got some great experience, and you are able to bring a lot of value to your clients. So thank you today. Thank you, Burns McDonnell, for being a member of the Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative. And I would say this is Mike Beeler saying thank you from the Power Delivery Intelligence Initiative for listening in today. We appreciate it. We appreciate T&D World, and I will hand it back to Nikki Chandler.
Thank you so much, Mike. That does conclude today's presentation. And on behalf of T&D World, I'd like to thank PDI Squared and Burns & McDonnell for sponsoring the webinar. And of course, all of you for joining. Have a great rest of your day.